Welcome back to the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel. My name is Matthew, and thank you for being here for another episode of Beyond the Lines. It's the show where we get an opposition supporter's view when it comes to previewing Newcastle's next game. And this Saturday, 5:30, under the lights at Selhurst Park, it's the Darren Ambrose derby as Newcastle take on Crystal Palace. And to help me preview this one, I'm joined by a very, very, very special guest. You might know him as HLTCO on Twitter from the HLTCO podcast, but now we get to see his beautiful face on his very own YouTube channel. It's the brilliant, it's the beautiful, it's Dan, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you very much for that intro, mate. I'm not sure I quite deserve it, but I'll take it where it comes. It's a very strange thing, putting your face out there for the first time because I don't know, you spend 10, 12 years with no one knowing what you look like, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's you. So, it's a bit weird. Like, I went to Chelsea last weekend and there were people coming up the stairs on the concourse and they were like double taking. And I wasn't sure because I was completely, that's an alien thing to me, right?
Of course.
So then I was sort of eviling them back because I'm like, what are you looking at? But that's because it's because I'm not used to the concept of someone recognizing me in the street. So yeah,
take it as a compliment, mate. They're recognizing you because they're taking your good work and they've now got a face to put to that good work, So we appreciate you taking the time to come on this. We're obviously getting you in because of your point of view when it comes to your beloved Palace. Let's talk about Crystal Palace just in general first. I mean, sitting in 12th in the Premier League, a very sort of symmetrical season going on, 1-6 through 5, lost 8. Coming off the back of a good point against Man United, though, a very informed Man United. 18 goals in 19 doesn't look too clever, but coming off the back of Man United, a draw at home, how have you seen this season so far?
It's been up and down. There's no getting around it. You look at the first year under Vieira, and it was very much an upward curve because we were transitioning from the Roy Hodgson style of play to a far more expansive style. And I think it really worked well in that first year because Conor Gallagher was there and it all felt fresh and new. But we have struggled to sort of maintain that level of momentum this season. And, we've got a lot of talented attacking players, Zaha, Eze, Elise, etc. But we've lacked a bit of bite in the middle of the park for me this term. Whether that's just Conor Gallagher's absence, you've got James McArthur as well, who's been a very long-term, energetic figure in the Palace midfield that we haven't had all season because he's had knee injuries and he's 35 now. And Chet Koyate as well was, not necessarily a regular starter for us last season, but he was a regular squad player and he's now gone to Nottingham Forest. So we signed Chet Decore to sort of plug the gap of 3 players, but it's been very difficult to maintain that level of momentum. But it feels like, to me at least, the last 2 games away at Chelsea and then Manchester United last night, we've got out. I don't know if I can swear on here or not, but it feels like we've got our balls.
Go for it.
Well, I was going to say bollocks, but yeah, it just feels like we've got a bit of Palace back in us. I don't know whether you watched or your listeners and viewers watched us last night, but as much as statistically we weren't necessarily on the ball as much as United, we felt like we were there and competing, which is more than you can say really for the sort of 4 or 5 weeks immediately prior.
It did seem that as much as perhaps you didn't take care of the ball as much as you would like to, quality-wise, in the first half at least, you carved out chances and you certainly had that bite about you to win the ball back and compete in different areas of the park, which is something that maybe, like you say, has been lacking a bit at Palace. You've said about being on the upward curve under Patrick Vieira. We'll talk about him a little bit now. Year and a half in charge. It felt like longer. When I saw that the other day, I thought he'd been there longer. 66 games in charge. Are you still thinking that Patrick Vieira is the man to take you forward? Has he shown you anything that gave you any doubts? Or is he definitely someone who you're holding a lot of stock in right now?
I think, from my personal point of view, when Steve Parish was first in charge, we went through a large list of managers, whether you look towards Sam Allardyce coming and then retiring, or Tony Pulis leaving and the whole court case that surrounded that. Obviously, Frank de Boer came in, and that was an experiment that went wrong, basically. Yeah. And we pulled the trigger very early there, but there were plenty of people in the media saying that, Parish doesn't like to keep managers around too long, he's trigger happy. But you look at Roy Hodgson and the stability that he brought, and it was the complete opposite of that. And I think there's been a real buy-in from the club as to the project under Patrick Vieira, not just in terms of the players that we've signed, because you can look towards the age profile and how low that's got, but also we've got a Category 1 academy now that in itself is sort of long-term future-proofing us. And I think there's a real hope that we can keep Pat around for another 3 or 4 years and really start to reap the rewards of that Category 1 academy to the point where we can start potentially bringing 1 or 2 players into the first team every year from the 21s and the 18s, because we haven't got the biggest ground in terms of corporate hospitality and gate receipts. We can't compete with your Newcastles and your West Hams, so we have to differentiate ourselves, and the academy in itself does that. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who of course played last night, we sold him for £50 million. You can't generate that sort of money in the transfer market through wheeling and dealing unless you do the Brentford model. And I think that is part of why, hopefully, the long-term prospect under Patrick Vieira will be there, because he will encourage the youth development as much as trying to sign the right players alongside it.
So what looks like a good season for Crystal Palace then? With all that taken into account, I know you appreciate you sort of competing with and trying to punch above your weight a little bit when it comes to generating funds at least. What looks like a good season come May, and what do you hope that you might make additions this month to try and kick these on a little bit?
I think there's a real desire at the club to sort of make sure that we've got more legs and more energy in the side. Will Hughes came in off the bench against Chelsea, but he started last night and he's got more bite about him than Jeffrey Schlupp. He will put, rough challenges in as and when necessary. He's pretty much a guaranteed booking. But I was saying this to someone the other day, he's not the sort of player that gets booked and you think, oh, that's a ridiculous foul to make. He does it at the opportune moment. He sort of understands the flow of the game, and he's got that sort of agginess to him that I like in a centre.
The yellow he took last night. is a good example of that, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was don't get me wrong, he was nowhere near the ball, and we all knew he wasn't going to win it. And there wasn't even really a reason to do it, but it just felt like it was a momentum stopper. And I think that's where his game intelligence is there. So I think we will look to get another central midfielder in this window if we can. In terms of what a successful season is for us, I don't know if you've looked at our fixtures between now and the end of March. They are an absolute shit show. Like the fixture list in itself is so cruel to us this year, because it started very difficult. We had Arsenal at home on the first day and it didn't let up for a couple of months. Then you go through this batch where they're winnable games, one after another. But then we've got another run now. I think that the easiest game on paper that I can see between now and the end of March is Brentford away. That's how difficult it is. We've got Arsenal, we've got Brighton twice, we've got United again in a couple of weeks, we've got yourselves on Saturday, we've got Villa away. It's just relentless. And if we can get to the end of March and we're still sort of 15th, then I think we can kick on and potentially finish around 12th. But it's all about sort of keeping your heads above water and not losing momentum, which is why that performance and point yesterday was so big, really.
Yeah. I mean, there was a question I was going to ask later when we came on to our predictions for the game, but I'll ask it now. You've just said there, and it's with getting an opposition fans' perspective. Sorry, you've just said there about the fixtures being tough and having sort of included Newcastle in that. I appreciate, as we talk now, we are in the top 4, which is great for Newcastle supporters. But with what's happened and went on at Newcastle since last January, October we got took over. Does the view of fans like yourselves, the view of Newcastle from the outside looking in, changed quite a bit? I mean, this game in the past would very much be a lower mid-table sort of battle, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I absolutely think that. I actually said to a group of my mates, we all go together to Palace, when we played you at St James's, that prior to the game, any point here is massive for us. Mm-hmm. And there was still a little bit of, we should probably be going up there, not expecting a point, but sort of seeing that as the base of expectations. And for me, I could see the growth of momentum in that side. I think it's very difficult, and obviously I sound like I'm pandering to the audience here a bit, but it's difficult. It's difficult to explain what Newcastle is like until you've been there. And as a Londoner, I've been to Newcastle 2 or 3 times. That Goldfish Bowl, it's sort of, for my money anyway, it works both ways, because when it's negative and the Mike Ashley era was there, it can be a runaway train of bad energy. But similarly, at the moment, you've got this tidal wave of positivity with Eddie Howe, with the money, but even the players that you've brought in. I don't necessarily feel like it's like a Manchester City project. I don't think it's just throw everything at it and see where you land. I think it's been very savvy. Even players like Isaac and Guimaraes, yes, they're obviously a cut above what you had before, but they're not superstars. They're relative rough diamonds that can be sort of built upon. You know, I remember when we had Conor Gallagher on loan last season, and I thought there's a player that Newcastle could easily buy and keep in their midfield for the next 5 or 6 years as a player that can sort of grow with the club. And I think the transfer business has sort of reflected that. So, yeah, from my point of view, obviously we're at home, and the point that we got last night is a massive one. It helps us with the momentum going into Saturday. But I still feel like a point would be a very good result for us. That's how I view Newcastle at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with the whole Goldfish Bowl and with the sort of the shrewd signings that we've made. And it's very much put us in good stead, because you can only go up from here if you're going to keep building. But let's talk about Palace's players. And you know, you can't talk about Crystal Palace without mentioning one Wilfred Zaha. I wouldn't say he's coming into the twilight of his career. That's probably a bit unfair. He's a fit lad. He's an athlete. He's 30 years old now. I know he's obviously massively high regard when it comes to Palace fans. Outside looking in, I think he can be a bit inconsistent, but he definitely can affect a game 100% no end. What's your thoughts on him as a player objectively now? And do you see him probably seeing out his career at Palace now after being linked away for so many years?
He's out of contract in the summer. He signed a 5-year deal in 2018. He obviously tried to leave before. There's been plenty of conversation about Wilf and whether or not he's got a bad attitude. He hasn't got a bad attitude for me, because at no point is he ever down tools. I think he's actually incapable of downing tools, if truth be told. He just doesn't have that mentality. He is very much someone that will step across the white line and just give 100% by his very nature. And I have a very, I say, protective view of him. I feel like he often gets talked about by neutrals as someone that hasn't fulfilled his potential, right? And that's because he went to Man United. We all know he was Ferguson's last signing. He never got to play under Fergie. David Moyes went in. He didn't have faith in him. It was a very difficult situation for Zaha, that, because, I mean, I was watching this morning, Jesse Lingard being interviewed in the podcast, and he said that Ferguson gave him a huge amount of faith and said, you know, in 5 years' time, you're going to be pivotal, but it was a long-term project. And I do think, had Ferguson been in charge of Manchester United with Zaha as a player, he would have made it there. My perspective on it is, you don't keep a club like ours pretty much single-handedly at times in the Premier League for close to 10 years unless you are a true difference maker. And I do genuinely believe that if he was playing for a Spurs or playing for a Man City or playing for an Arsenal, his whole perception in terms of the way that neutrals look at him would be totally different, because there have been seasons, not necessarily under Patrick Vieira, but across the last 5 or 6 years, where he has been the sort of lightning rod, the man who has picked the club up and carried it on his back. So people talk about inconsistencies. No player is perfect 100% of the time. And often he's being double and triple marked by defenders, and it's very, very difficult. You know, it happens to be in the current guys that you've got Eze, you've got Elise, Edouard, etc. There are different tools now. But yeah, I love him, and it's a mark of how much we all care about him. I think he's going to leave in the summer, and no one's really going to bear any ill will towards him, because he's earned it. He deserves it. And if he does choose to go and play for a Champions League club, then he's got every right to do that, I think. Do
you think that he will go? Do you think someone in the top 6, in inverted brackets, will come in for him and give him that last 2-3 year contract with him being 30 years old? Yeah,
absolutely, because he's free. So the thing is, we've offered him 150 grand a week. He's on 125 now, and we've offered to up that to 150, and he said no. It's not about money at this point. It's about him testing himself at the highest level. There were Spurs fans when we lost to them shamefully 4-0 the other day, and they were singing "You're just a shit Aaron Lennon" at him. And I couldn't help but laugh, because we all know that come the summer, they're going to be all over social media. Oh, come and sign for us. Come and play for us. Yeah. Arsenal will be the same. I guarantee you now. Let's not forget, Nicolas Pepe went to Arsenal when Unai Emery wanted Zaha, and they paid £72 million to Nicolas Pepe. 72. We were saying 50 million quid, right? And everyone said, you're out of your head. Like £50 million, and they paid 72 million for Pepe. And there is not a sane football fan on the planet that would suggest to me. This is no slight on Nicolas Pepe, by the way. But
it's a little bit now. I understand why, though. He didn't live up to £70 million, especially at that time.
no one is saying that he's on a level of Zaha. Like, he's done it consistently in the Prem for 10 years. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Zaha rather than a Palace podcast, but it does.
I asked the question.
It does annoy me. Like, it genuinely does, because I feel like our status as a club dictates his view in the minds of neutrals. And I think if he was playing for a club that had more respect on the footballing landscape, then he wouldn't be looked upon in the same way at all.
We'll get onto the game, but we've talked about Zaha there. Come Saturday, in your squad now, for people who might not keep much of an eye on Palace, who's that other difference maker that you, if say they weren't on the team sheet come Saturday, you'd be thinking, okay, we've got less of a chance of winning this game now?
It depends. I mean, if you talk about a difference maker, then it has to be Michael Olise from an attacking point of view. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this or watching this will have seen the free kick he scored. He's capable of ridiculous things, Michael. He's a little bit lightweight still. He's still having edges knocked off him. But in terms of natural ability, I've seen very little like him at Palace in my time going, because he can just do all sorts. But in terms of importance to the 11, for me, it's Mark Gay or Chet Decore. You know, there's been plenty of talk about Joachim Andersen, which I understand, because as a centre-back, he's capable of spraying 50 and 60-yard passes.
And he misses the game Saturday, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's out for 3 or 4 weeks, I think. But we actually had Chris Richards make his first start for us since signing last night, and he was fantastic, if truth be told. He's still just 22, signed a 5-year deal from Bayern Munich. He's a lot quicker than Joachim Andersen, and he's better in the air as well. So I'm not suggesting he's a better footballer, because Andersen is a fantastic technical footballer. But from a defensive perspective, it's almost, I'm sort of hesitant to say this after one start, but it feels like it might be a little bit of an upgrade defensively. But Mark Gay and Chet Decore are just fantastic footballers. I have no idea how we managed to get Mark Gay in for the price that we did from Chelsea. It's a travesty for me that he didn't go away with England to Qatar. I saw Conor Cody got in there, and I was just like, there is no way. I mean, once again, this isn't a slight on Conor Cody. I just don't understand what Mark Gay could have done more. He's a fantastically confident defender. He's got pace. He's got the good ability to read the game. He's a leader. He can, he's just got everything you'd want, other than maybe a couple more inches of height. And Chet Decore in the middle of the park is just the engine room, really. So if we missed one of those two, I'd be very, very concerned about our chances of keeping you at bay.
I mean, Olise, I've took a keen interest in him since that, was it an FA Cup game against Millwall, where we were away and he scored a very good goal, and I just thought,
the crowd as well.
Yeah, he looked very bright. So I mean, Eze, I've been a fan of his. Like, again, just he's still quite young, isn't he? Eze.
24, 23.
Fair play. But I mean, definitely from my side of things, I always look at them players, your Zahas, your Ezes and Lisa, they're very much the ones that can hurt you going forward. But then you don't think about the solid players. I think that's very much the away side mentality to really concentrate on the attackers rather than those really solid foundation central defensive midfielders, centre backs. Do you know what I mean? So on the flip side of things, I mean, I'm not in the habit of forcing fans to slag off their team or anything, but is there a player that could be starting Saturday that you think maybe he's in a weak link but has the potential to maybe cost you a mistake or something?
It's difficult. There's no one player that I look towards who there have been seasons where, I don't like Luka Milivojevic, for example. That right. Is just a fact. Right? I can't get away from it. Even though he's our club captain, I see him come on. I don't enjoy it. I don't want him anywhere near the team. Right? But he's no longer part of the squad, really. Like, he came on last night, but it's like a bit part thing. Whereas when he was starting, it was giving me nightmares. The fullbacks, not so much Tyreek, but on the right-hand side, it's no criticism of Joel Ward and Nathaniel Klein, but we do need an upgrade on the right-hand side of our back four. They've been very good, loyal servants to us over a number of years. But obviously, Aaron went to Man United 3 years ago now, I think it was. And we signed Nathan Ferguson from West Brom to be his long-term replacement. And he's literally played 25 minutes of Premier League football because he's been injured the entire time. And that's no one's fault. It's just a really sad sort of turn of events. He's actually out of contract this summer coming. So it looks like he's pretty much just going to wave goodbye to us without ever making any impact. But that in itself is something we've needed to address for a number of years. And given your attacking talents and how much momentum you've built over the last few weeks, if you do build up a head of steam and get out our right backs, there is a chance that you could cause us problems. But at the same time, I could sort of point towards Vicente Gaeta, not because of shot stopping, but because we try to play a more possession-based style than we have in recent years. And for my money, he's just not really comfortable with his feet and never has been. That was sort of evident against Southampton. He dropped at Clanger and allowed Adam Armstrong to score the second goal for them. But, I mean, obviously, ball-playing goalkeepers are a premium anyway, and it's not something we've necessarily looked to secure, but it's something you can certainly exploit if you put him under pressure with the ball at his feet.
Well, that's certainly something we've been trying to do all season, this pressing game at Eddie Howe's instilled. But in terms of the game itself, it's been a mixed bag, again, a very, very mixed bag. Newcastle Palace in I've just looked at the last 10 games, 4 to Newcastle, 3 to Palace, 3 draws. At Selhurst Park, the last 3 games, 1 win for Newcastle, 1 win for Palace, 1 draw. Newcastle are going to go into this, obviously buoyed by the late win against Fulham. We still have only lost 1 game all season away to Liverpool. But we're going to be missing a certain Mr. Bruno Guimaraes by the looks of things, which might force us to go into those wide areas, like you've just said. We might get some joy there. But Bruno's massive part of how we play. You've said that you would take a good point, but I mean, have you got much hope of 3 points? Do you have? What's your prediction?
My prediction. I'll never predict us on these fan opposition things to lose because I just can't do it. But at the same time, I don't want to look like a dickhead and say we're going to beat you because that just makes it look as bad anyway. So I will probably say a 1-1 draw again. Like I back us to be honest, and this is something I've been saying to my Palace mates over the last few days. We lost to Chelsea on Sunday, but it felt to me like we were rediscovering a bit of our DNA. And it's impossible to sort of put a tangible reason for that. There will be certain people that have seen it. I dare say many people haven't. There was one issue with Conor Gallagher on the pitch with about 10 minutes to go at Stamford Bridge, where he went down and pretended he was injured, but he wasn't. And obviously, he's been on loan with us. We all know him. Mark Gay is a very close friend of Conor Gallagher's. And Mark Gay leant over him, had a go at him, picked him up. He fell to the floor again, and then Mark Gay, Wilfred Zaha, Will Hughes, and Mateta all crowded round him and pretty much was just like, get off the fucking pitch. And that in itself made me as happy as an equaliser would, because it felt like we have been very soft for a number of weeks. And it's actually something I complimented Eddie Howe and Newcastle about a week or two ago. I got a bit of stick back from Newcastle fans for some reason, because I said he's a master of the dark arts. It's not a criticism.
100%.
It's all top clubs do it. All top clubs need a nasty streak. They need to, not to tell people that they won't be messed around with, but just understand game management. And we are starting to do that again now. We're snapping into 50-50s. We're getting into the opposition's face. We're causing them to feel uncomfortable. And that has not been the case since the World Cup ended, really. And it started to come back in these last 2 games. So I'm hoping, regardless of the run you've been on, the quality that you've got in your squad now with Isak and even Joe Linton. I think Joe Linton's been a revelation in the middle of the park for you. But I sort of do have hope that we can get another point on the board, or possibly even 3. Once we equalised last night, we did actually nearly go on and snatch it. It was only a great tackle from Wan-Bissaka that stopped Zaha being on goal. So I think there is a belief starting to build again.
Well, I mean, when you said there about getting flack of Newcastle supporters for saying what you said, I mean, they'll be the same supporters or fans who, when we played Leeds on New Year's Eve, they came and set up just to frustrate us and play them at their game. Time wasting all over the place, and they'll be the fans who are going on Twitter saying that, Leeds pathetic, these tactics are horrible, but then literally days later, we go to Arsenal, do the exact same thing, but just defend a little bit more classily. But we totally run down the clock by going down, by dragging with feet and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, it's a great away point. Every side has to have them in them. I mean, Newcastle are nowhere near there yet, where we can just go and play sides like Arsenal or go a tough away games and try and stroke the ball about and play free-flowing attacking football. If we're 1-0 up, Dan, tomorrow, or we'll by the odd goal, or winning by the odd goal, with 10 minutes to go, you'll be cursing Newcastle United because we'll be doing everything that people hate. And I don't mind
It's
that
what you
because
want. It's what
yeah.
I have no problem with that. That's what you like. All right. So last night we played Man United, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you're going to get Man United fans saying we've robbed them of a point, or because they had better XG or they had more of the ball. How are you supposed to go into these games with lesser budgets and everything else and go toe to toe with them? It would be suicide for us to try and match Manchester United from a free flowing football perspective. It makes no sense. So you have to go about it a certain way. It's what makes football football. So if you do come and you're 1-0 up with 10 or 15 minutes to go, of course you're going to be laying on the floor. Chelsea did it to us the other day, and they won a European Cup. It's frustrating, but it's part of the deal. Sorry if you've got any feedback from my kid, by the way, he's screaming.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. So if I had to press you for a score, Dan, what are we going for?
1-1. 1-1.
To be honest,
I'll stick with the 1-1s.
I'm feeling the same. And I'm known for being a bit of a pessimist. I say it on every video, but I feel it's still going to be very, tough place to go. I feel like it might be a mirror's image a little bit though of the game last season where yous were very much on the front foot, had most of the possession, went 1-0 up, and out of nowhere we equalised. Callum Wilson overhead kick. Very much. I have a feeling that might happen again. I hope it doesn't. Hope I'm completely wrong and we comfortably get 3 points. But I just have this little feeling. But we will see what happens. Again, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. We know you're very, very busy. Best of luck with the podcast, the YouTube channel. Tell everyone where we can find you online.
So I'm on Twitter at HLTCO. The YouTube link is HLTCO Media. I've got to get used to saying that because it's new. And then Patreon as well, which the links are on my YouTube or on my Twitter account. It's just Patreon and then /HLTCO. I do 2 podcasts every single morning, one about Palace specifically and one about football generally. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again. Best of luck with all of that, Dan. Again, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate you busy.
No,
to everyone who's watching, man, thank you so much. To everyone who's been watching, thank you for watching. Please do all the good stuff. Comment on the video what you think is going to happen on Saturday. Give that thing a like as well. And if you haven't already, what the hell are you doing if you're a Newcastle supporter? Follow Gallowgateshots on Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and just, we'll keep these videos coming for you. But until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.